Our guest today is Congressman Denny Rehberg, and he is here answering questions from reporters. And also, I have one for you. You were somewhat a champion of children's health insurance program, and right now it's stuck in the Montana State Legislature, and it appears that it's going to, the voters approved a referendum which would have boosted the coverage to 250% of the poverty level, but right now Republicans want to keep that at 200%. And you've been asked by the Democrats to talk to your Republican colleagues about this. Will you do so? And what would you say to them?
I spoke to the legislature about a month ago and had a conversation with many of the Republican legislators afterward, and they asked me questions about the S-CHIP program in Washington, D.C. Keep in mind that the federal government does not have a balanced budget requirement. I believe it should. And I've championed efforts, and when I was in the state legislature, I carried legislation to call for a constitutional amendment for the specific purpose of asking the states to balance the federal budget by constitution, but we don't. Now, 48 states out of 50 do have a balanced budget requirement, and thank goodness Montana is one of them. So what we're able to do in Washington, D.C. is entirely different than what they're able to pay for based upon the revenues. And as the states can tell you and the legislators can tell you, they have substantially had to continue to decrease the revenues that are going to be available. So I can't second guess what the legislators are doing on the various programs. Just because they were authorized to spend a certain amount of money doesn't require them to spend that certain amount of money. That's the appropriation level. And so I really have to leave it up to the 100 legislators and the 50 senators in Montana that have an entirely different scenario, that can they afford to change the poverty rate, how many kids can they sign up, and my encouragement to them was do as much as you possibly can. That we set the standard in Washington. We think it's a priority within the revenues available in the state of Montana. As you prioritize and reprioritize to balance your budget, do as much as you possibly can for the kids.
All right, let's turn to John now for the next question.
Thanks, Don. Congressman Rehberg, if I go out and I write a bad check, I get popped for it. My bank charges me fees. If I write a big enough bad check, I might get in trouble with the law.
Yes.
But here we've got a situation where Wall Street investors have squandered billions of dollars of investors' hard-earned retirement savings.
Right.
Other than Bernie Madoff, I don't know that any of them have been indicted or sent to jail. Is there a double standard here for the average American people in how Congress is treating Wall Street?
Congress is not treating Wall Street any way, shape, or form. We have passed the laws to punish anybody that has broken the law. So remember, we have three forms of government within the United States. We have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. Now, the executive branch manages the laws that we pass. The Justice Department is under the President's authority. We have passed every possible law that we can think of to incarcerate people that break the law. I want the bums to go to jail. If they've broken the law, Congress doesn't indict. Congress doesn't prosecute. The Justice Department are the lawyers for the government, and they do it through the judicial system. So if anybody can name any area where we need another law to put these bums in jail, I'm all for it. I'll sign it. I'll vote for it. But ultimately, then, we have to pass the responsibility on to both the Justice Department and the judicial system to get after them. So I don't think Congress is setting the double standard. Put the bums in jail that have committed the crimes, that have done it. And that's why I want to be tough on the groups like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who, under pressure, started loaning to people that couldn't afford the loans. Congress tried to change that. We were unsuccessful in doing it. Congress is to blame in this particular case, but I voted for additional penalties or additional restrictions on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Go back and find out who in Congress did not, like Chris Dodd and Barney Frank, hold them responsible for not having done what should have been done to keep much of this from happening in the first place. But I don't think it's Congress having a double standard in the case of the prosecution. We need to prosecute anybody that broke the law.
Lisa, do you have a short question?
I do. Then how would Congress justify sending bailout money to a broken industry, or industry where we know this is a problem, even if they're not being prosecuted?
They can't, and that's why I voted no. And that's why I have said in every way, shape, or form that I disagreed with the bailout of the major banks who created the problem. We should have done it. If you were going to help any bank, get it to the community banks in Montana who were not part of the problem. 47 states had banks, 400 banks within 47 states that took bailout money. Thank goodness Montana was one of the 3 that did not. The problem is our taxpayers have to pay for it like those others, so it shouldn't have happened in the first place, and I voted against the bank bailout.
All right, we'll be back with Congressman Denny Rehberg after this break.
Thanks. This campaign season got off to a quick start. First of all, you haven't announced officially, but do you plan to run again?
I do.
Okay. With that, the Montana Republican Party has been sending a near daily barrage against your primary critic on the Democratic side, Dennis McDonald, the chairman of the Montana Democratic Party. The criticism to this point has been primarily over his past career when he was an attorney in California when he represented a man, Jimmy Fratiano, who was a mob boss. Is that a legitimate line of attack at this point in the campaign, already to be going after McDonald for his career 20 years ago? And I haven't heard you comment on that yet either.
I have not, and there has to be a separation between what state parties do and people do on my behalf. It's one of those laws that's out there that we're not able to collude or coordinate and such, and the state party has taken an opportunity to look at backgrounds. And ultimately it's going to be a determination of San Francisco values versus Montana values. And being a 5th generation Montana rancher, I've got a long history of working in both public service and small business within Montana. And my background, people look at, when I originally ran, they looked at where I went to high school and where I went to college and what my college degree was in and how much business acumen do I have in both ranching and real estate and all the other things I've done. So any candidate is going to be closely scrutinized for the things that they stand for, so people, as they elect one representative for the entire state of Montana, and I remember I have the 2nd largest geography of anybody in Congress and by far the largest population. There are 2 senators and 1 congressman in Montana. We're up against 53 congressmen and women and 2 senators in California. And so you need to know who you're electing, what their values are, ultimately how they're going to represent you in Washington, and ultimately I hope that they retain me. And so any candidate is going to have close scrutiny, and I can assure you the media is going to be the one that's going to make sure that that happens.
All right, Lisa, let's hear from you.
Talking about Montana values, Dennis McDonald has been quoted several times saying Montana's a red state that's turning bluer every day. We have obviously Democratic governor, our 2 senators are Democrats, and our top 5 office holders in the state are Democrats. As Montana's lone congressman and the lone Republican in our congressional delegation, do you think that your values are still in touch with what Montanans are wanting right now?
Well, see, I would disagree with his one assumption and conclusion. People are tired of partisan politics. Why are we still debating red state and blue state? Most of the arguments that occur in Washington, D.C. aren't between red and blue, and they're not between the East and West Coast and the rest of us. It ultimately boils down to a debate between rural and urban constituencies. And frankly, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Miami, they look at things differently than Montana. And so the people of Montana are tired of partisan politics. They want us to lay that aside and do what's in the best interest of trying to represent those people. That's why I travel all 56 counties every Congress. I'm on the road. I'll have listening sessions next week in Circle, Jordan, Glendive, Plentywood, Scobie. I'm on the road. I'm here now. I was in Bozeman this morning. I'll be in Great Falls tomorrow, and I was in Red Lodge yesterday. And so constantly on the road trying to listen and learn and help. And so, I don't look at it that way. I think my values and my philosophies are in tune with the majority of Montanans, or I probably wouldn't have gotten 65% of the vote last time when Republicans weren't doing very well nationwide. So I think I do still represent a far overwhelming majority. There's 35% of the people that just aren't going to vote for me. Ironically, my opponent in the last election during our first debate said he was going to vote for me. And I still lost 35% of those partisans who just don't like me.
What is that? It was 34.9999.